Thanks for joining us this morning on this May the 4th and our Works with DW Spectrum webinar. My name is Patrick Kelly. I'm the Director of IP Video Solutions for Digital Watchdog. Thank you for joining us today. We appreciate you logging in and checking it out. So for today's agenda, we're excited to share with you the Keyscan Aurora platform. We have a couple of the Keyscan team members on board here. And so we're going to go over the advantages, the partners, and the channel of the Keyscan Aurora access control platform. We're going to do a little demo. Then we're going to add a little DW Spectrum overview and a quick little demo, and then a Q&A and a wrap up at the end. There is a chat function here in the Zoom, as most everybody's aware at this point, but by all means, time permitting at the end, we do want to answer your questions, or if we have to, we can always send you an email if you submit your questions through the Q&A through the chat. So please load up the any questions that you have, and we'll try to get them answered on the session, or at least give you a wrap up. All right, so this morning I am glad to be joined by Brian Shrake. Excuse me. Brian, can you hear me?
Yes.
Out there? Okay, thanks for joining us. Why don't you take us through the Keyscan Aurora software platform?
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, I'm the Senior Sales Portfolio Manager for Keyscan. And I want to go through some of the features of the Aurora software. Can you go to the next slide? So these are some of the advantages of the Keyscan Aurora platform. There's no annual licensing fees or any other annual fees. Out of the box, you've got an unlimited number of readers, panels, sites, unlimited number of sites that you can have with the Keyscan system. There's no licensing fees to adding readers, panels, sites, or batch codes. We support 256 concurrent batch codes or facility codes in Aurora. Support for multiple concurrent card formats. There are no software upgrades from basic to standard to enterprise. There are bolt-on licenses that you can get for integrations like the digital Watchdog integration. Our tech support is North American based, and we have it available in English, Spanish, and French. And we have a great reputation for reliability, far exceeding the 7 to 10 year life expectancy of most access control systems. Every month I track our upgrades from our old legacy systems, and every month we're doing systems that are 14, 15, 16 years old. So we routinely get way past the average 7 to 10 years. Next, Patrick. So the panels are not server dependent. We store the database in the field, which will play into the last detail on this slide here. Out of the box, we include active mapping, photo ID, and a very simplistic visitor management system. We do have some partners with some other visitor management systems if you need to have a system that'll check databases like felony databases and whatnot. We have a multi-threaded communication structure, so it speeds up communications. When you press save in Aurora, it sends out the information to all the IP addresses simultaneously. We are people-centric instead of credential-centric, so one person can have multiple credentials. You can have 10 groups assigned to a single credential. Kind of helps you with mapping out your group access levels. We have something called the present 3 functionality, which is if you present your card 3 times within 5 seconds to a reader, it can trigger another function if it's programmed to do so. And that can be programmed by reader and by credential. So with presenting my card 3 times in 5 seconds to a reader, say I'm the principal of the school, I can lock down the entire school, or I can trigger a time zone, or I can trigger a relay to have something else happen. So we can use it as a form of first person in as well. And lastly, unique to our platform is we have something called disaster recovery. Because we store the database in the field, if you have a catastrophic failure of your database or your database server, then you can reinstall Aurora and call the database back from the field, and you get about 98% of the data. You don't get full names. Instead of Brian Shrake, you just get BS. Not literally, but next slide. These show some of our integration partners that we have. We have VMS integration, wireless lock integration. We have our own wireless locks, but we also integrate with the Elysian AD400 and the NDE. We have visitor management integration through HID Easy Lobby, Savance, and Teleris. Active Directory integration with Microsoft. Intrusion integration with DMP and DSC. Biometric integration with BioConnect and Suprema, and some other strategic integrations like Kone and Otis for destination dispatch elevator control. Next slide, Patrick. So how Keyscan goes to market is we are we're distribution based. So we go through low voltage alarm distribution, locksmith distribution, data telecom distributors, electrical. We do have an elite partner program that you still buy through distribution, but there are some benefits to being an elite partner. We do have very few, but we do have some direct to dealer. In Canada, our model is more direct to dealer up there. And we also support buying groups like PSA and the AIM group. Next slide. This shows like 30 of our top distributors around the country here in the US, and some of these do go up into Canada as well. But we are available, Keyscan's available at all of these brands.
Okay. So there's a lot of symmetry there between Digital Watchdog and Keyscan as far as where it's available.
Absolutely, yes.
So
with that, I'll pass it over to you and Matthias.
Thank you. All right. So Matthias, let's.
So this is the Keyscan Aurora software. So in here, basically, we've got a number of different functions. Just very quickly, across the bottom here is basically where we manage our different sections for the software. So we have our manage people section. We have our site management, which is where you configure all of your devices within that portion of the database. We have the video integration icon, which allows you to then pull up the specific video integration that you might have there. We have the settings, which allows you to kind of administer the core functions of the Aurora software. We have a status section where you can have live monitoring and control of the devices. Map icon. So this is our active mapping. And just very quickly here, the video integration and the active mapping only show once you kind of configure those portions. So out of the box, you would only normally see the first 5 icons. But once you've added active maps to the system, then you'll see the icon there. And the last one there is reports. So there's a pretty detailed report section here, allowing for a number of different functions for people-related reports, door-related reports, a couple of integrated, so ePlex reports as well. But our kind of core function reports is the system log, which is everything software-driven, and transaction report, which is everything hardware-driven. So the system log basically allows you to see who's logging into the software, where they're logging in from, and what they're doing in the software. And then, of course, everything in the transaction report, that's everything that's coming back from the hardware. So that's everything from access granted and denied events, alarm trips, device toggles, and things like that. Our transactions are very detailed. Actually, there's over 500 different transaction events that we're monitoring across all of our various devices. Even around access denied, as an example, has nearly 20 variations. So we're very specific as to why someone may not have access when they use their credential. So for the video integration in particular, we have a couple of different ways that that we can utilize that. So if you have someone that's actively monitoring the system, so for example, security personnel, and you have the events kind of set up so that if there's for example, a door forced open or some other violation for the system, we can automatically pop up that video feed from the system, and then they can see that live video feed. If, for example, the event took place when the system was not being monitored, we have the ability to go back and view that recorded video to call that event back through our transaction monitoring or transaction response. So from here, you can see I've got just a bunch of different alarms in my system there from a little while ago. But for example, if I was to select one of these, this one isn't particularly linked with a video icon or video action, I'll say. But you can see here, I can have it show the video. And if that was actually linked with the camera, then I could have it pull up the recorded video feed from that event. One of the other functions as well is through the active map, and this is probably the nicest function here, is the through the map interface, we can interact with our devices. So similar as with our status screen, of course this is more graphical, and then you can kind of see how the system is laid out from devices, and of course then be able to interact with those devices. So for example, with our doors, I could unlock, or I could do a pulse command to that door, which just momentarily unlocks it, or I could do a timed unlock, so it's unlocked for a few minutes. But through the camera action, I can have it pull up our video, and let's see here, there we go. I can then see that live video feed from that camera.
So I just wanted to point out to the audience that the cameras that you're looking at. So basically with this integration, you're pulling video that's being managed by a DW Spectrum system into the Aurora system. So those particular cameras are actually coming from the Digital Watchdog office in California, as you bring up that with that interactive map solution.
Exactly, yes. So the cameras themselves are being managed by the excuse me. There we go. Yeah, so the cameras themselves are being managed by the Digital Watchdog software. These ones in particular are actually hosted at Digital Watchdog's office there. And basically, yeah, exactly that. We're able to pull that video feed, or whether that's the live video or the recorded video, from that system. So we are basically letting the video system, so Digital Watchdog in this case, manage the video, and we're basically just calling upon their system to show us that video. That last function there, so I'll probably cut out for a second. So the last function there is the ability to manually call the video feed. And so that last view, you can see here, it's showing us a couple of different cameras, and that's based off of your permissions within the Digital Watchdog system there. So a little bit of setup to configure the integration, but it's pretty straightforward. It's nice and clean interface there.
Is it possible you can show the setup screen from here?
Yeah, so let me just close that out there. So for the setup, as with all functions within our within Aurora, all of our hardware is configured within the hardware setup. So you may have multiple sites. So you can see here I've got a site selection option just within this one site here. You can see all the various devices that I've got configured, and I can go to my Digital Watchdog screen here. And well, actually, just very quickly, I'll go through the actions of adding a new one. So I'm not saving any changes. Yes. So I've added a new video integration device. From here, I can basically provide a name for it. So I could say Digital Watchdog server. Under the host, we're typically looking for an IP address, but it could potentially be a machine name depending on configuration there. And then the connection, the port connection. Down below there is the login credentials. So the username and the password that the software itself will use to connect into Digital Watchdog in this case.
So that's your client connection into DW Spectrum. So you're using your client connection in there, right?
Exactly. And then on the right-hand side, we have the ability to specify the cameras. So on here, by default, we just say 16, but you can specify the number of actual cameras that will be in use. So you can say anywhere from 1 to just over 1,000 different cameras. And then once you specified your cameras, so for example, I'll just say 8 and update that. Once you've specified the number of cameras, then you have the ability to name those. And that allows you to kind of interact with them a little bit more easily within the system. So for example, if I pull up the map again, I can see this one is, when I hover over it there, it's labeled as parking. And if I go back over to Digital Watchdog, I can see that camera 5 is labeled as parking. So that's how I kind of know which camera that I'm looking at. Outside of that, that's basically all the setup that's required on the Aurora, through the Aurora interface.
Yeah, so there is one more step in terms of setting it up within DW Spectrum, which I'll cover when I get into the Spectrum demo. And I know I said we would do questions at the end, but I saw one come in, and it's basically asking if the Spectrum system and the Keyscan system need to be on the same network. So I just wanted to kind of reiterate the point. Matthias is in, where are you located, Matthias? Toronto? Just
outside Toronto, Canada.
Yeah. So the system that he's on is in Toronto, Canada, and he's making a connection to the Spectrum system and in our office in Cerritos, California, to bring those cameras up in the camera view. So know that they need to have network connectivity, but on the same LAN, no, they do not need to be on the same local area network. Sorry, go ahead, continue. Didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's perfect. That was all I was kind of planning to cover, unless there's anything else to go over, and we can kind of come back if there's any questions as well.
And so this gets activated with a video integration license?
Oh, sorry, yes. So through our software registration in the software there, we have the option to add a video license. So you can see that's registered on my system here. And yes, so exactly that. You'll purchase the video integration license through our distribution partners, and then they'll provide you a AUR 450 license, and then that's kind of our prefix number, and then that unlocks the video capability within our system there.
Another question that just came in, as long as we're on the Aurora interface at this point, can you generate a camera call up based on an alarm from Aurora?
Yes, absolutely. So that kind of goes back to that live monitoring that I'd mentioned. So if you have someone who's actively monitoring the system and you want to get those live pop-ups of the video feed, we can do that through our event setup. And again, so that's specifically for if you have someone who's actively monitoring, but that's also how we link our video functions with our transaction response function. So if that event took place in the past, we would go to our transaction response. Just kind of go over here, do a search. And if I was to select that transaction, I could hit that show video if there was a action that was linked with a specific camera. We'll just kind of quickly go through the setup for that. So let's say, for example, I had a access denied. Anytime I have an access denied event, I want to have a video call up. So I can choose my access denied for my service entrance door. You can see there it's chosen basically all the access denied variations that this door supports. So we have access denied, card not in the controller, schedule violation, door violation. So those saying basically that you're not currently within your schedule to access. So if you have normally access between 9 and 5 and you're trying to go in at 6 p.m., you'll get a schedule violation. Door violation, meaning you don't have access to that door. And then just a number of variations there as well. So I've chosen my access denied event. From here, I can do some other functions as well. So I can have response instructions, which relate back to that transaction response page. So for example, for someone who's actively monitoring the system, so security personnel, you can provide them an instruction on what they should be doing, where they should be going to, and providing some contact information. And we could even link that with a map function as well. So I could say, yes, that's in the admin area, or it's on the site plan map. For the actions, this is where we would link it with the actual video for it to call up the camera. So I would choose my video device, choose my camera. So in this case, I'll just say the parking one. And I could even specify when I want that to be able to do a live pop-up. So I can leave it on the 24-hour function, and anytime someone is monitoring the system, they'll get that video feed. If I'm only expecting, or I only want that function to take place during a specific scheduled period, so for example, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, I can choose that schedule, and then outside of that schedule, it won't automatically pop up that video feed. And then all I have to do is hit save, and then that takes place in the system.
Excellent. So quick question on the video integration license that you mentioned. That's per system, right? It's not per camera.
Exactly, yes. So the video license is for the database. So if you have Aurora managing multiple locations, you would just register that license the one time, and that would allow as many connections to different digital watchdog servers that you might have for those different sites, as an example.
Excellent. Okay. Pretty simple and straightforward there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's one of the nice things. It's got a nice intuitive interface.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's switch it back here. And what I'm going to do from there is just do a quick little introduction to DW, because we do have some new names in this session. So just a little familiarity with background with the company. We're founded in 1987. We're a complete surveillance solution. So we operate in the surveillance space. We have offices in the Tampa, Florida office, and then we have our headquarters in Southern California. Our manufacturing facilities are in South Korea and Vietnam. We are a NDAA compliant manufacturer, meaning that all of the components that we use are NDAA compliant, our manufacturing being in South Korea and Vietnam. So we comply with all the requirements of NDAA and TAA. Our product line itself, DW Spectrum, is our IP video management solution. You can see we've kind of pushed the video integration or video capabilities from back in the coax days through with DW Spectrum, and we've added products like the Megapix IP cameras, our Blackjack NVRs, as well as our Megapix CAS cameras, just to kind of give you a quick background on the company as a whole and everything that we do in terms of that complete solution. So when we look at DW Spectrum, it is part of a complete solution with the Megapix cameras, compressor encoders to take your existing analog infrastructure and bring it into DW Spectrum, as well as our Blackjack NVRs that are scalable for a variety of sizes. So there, in terms of Spectrum, there are a number of reasons to use Spectrum. We've boiled it down to 6 big reasons of why Spectrum. And when we talk about the interface is dramatically easier to use, built for users, and surveillance made simple. So you can talk about that on a PowerPoint slide with a number of icons, or we can try to jump into it and demonstrate it. So for those of you that are unfamiliar with DW Spectrum, we'll kind of just do a quick little into one of our demo systems here, and you can see, I'll just bring a couple of cameras over here. So we'll bring these two cameras. And so what we give the user is the ability to lay out their camera views any which way they like. They can simply just drag a camera over into the display. You can resize and reposition that camera, and the software will just continue to work with the user as it's resizing. If I go ahead and swap them out, there's three main areas of our software. There's the tab bar across the top, the sight tree down the left, and then the pan-temporal timeline down across the bottom that shows all the recorded video within this particular system. So as I go back and do a search through video, it's as simple as either using the calendar function, or actually I can just use my mouse and roll over a section within the timeline. So all I'm doing is taking the wheel ball on my mouse and rolling it in and going to the 11:30 mark, and all cameras that are on display have video recorded. If they're set up to be motion-based recording and there's no motion, they'll just say no data until it gets to that point in the timeline where there was motion in front of that particular camera. I can, of course, use the calendar function to go to a specific date. So if I want to go to the 3rd, go back to Monday. If I want to go to the 3 p.m., I can select 3 p.m. and then I can use hit 3:10, and we're back at the 3:10 mark that fast. If I bring a new camera into the display, it also is synchronized at that same time and date. So by default, everything is synchronized. In that playback mode, to go back to live, I just hit the live icon here. I can, of course, just put one camera into playback by unsyncing. So I uncheck the sync button there, and then I've highlighted this particular camera. And then I'm going to use this, the calendar, to go back to 1 p.m. and select the 1:20 mark and put this camera into playback while the others remain in live. And I can mouse over each one of those cameras and see that they're in live while this one's in playback. If I want to sync everything on the screen back up to that playback time, I hit the sync and everything is back into that live mode, or playback mode, excuse me. If I go back to live here. Probably the most efficient method in terms of searching through video is the smart search capability. So we've got a motion-based smart search window that pops up here in the right panel. You can leave that open, or you can minimize that, but you can use this just click and drag method here and highlight. And then as we do that, there's indications in the timeline, and the red indication of every time there was motion in the area that I just drew. So we can index about a year's worth of video in about a second. And you'll see it comes back. And so any kind of change in there pops it in there. While I'm here, I'm going to pop into the camera settings for a second and show you, this is the motion grid where we can set up different levels of pixelization change to trigger those record events and that motion detection. So we've got those motion grids here. While we're here in the camera settings, a couple other things as far as how we're recording. We can record continuously, we can record in motion. And the third option here is that we can record a low resolution stream continuously and then kick it into full high resolution. Spectrum supports anywhere from standard definition up to the high resolution. I mean, it'll support our 48 megapixel panoramic camera. So there's really no limit in terms of the resolution capabilities within Spectrum. And of course, within this schedule, you can have different recordings going on during different hour parts. What I wanted to show you and how this ties in terms of the Keyscan integration is on the Expert tab, and it specifically involves the logical IDs. So as Matthias said, you can bring in cameras. You just simply put a number in their interface and it'll go to that Spectrum system and retrieve the cameras. The cameras that it is retrieving are the ones that are identified with a logical ID. So you can have Spectrum generate a logical ID, or you can assign. And so for those that have been in the CCTV industry, you'll remember in DVR days, we had camera inputs on DVRs 1 through 16, and we had multiplexers back in the day. So today, right now, in Spectrum, a camera ID looks kind of like a MAC address with the IP address. But to make it work with the Keyscan integration, we kind of So we put in this logical ID to where you could go and assign an old-fashioned camera number to this particular camera. And once you apply that number to that camera, that's what's actually being pulled into the Keyscan integration, is cameras assigned with a logical ID. So the one step you need to do in Spectrum, as Matthias and I were talking, is this assigning of a logical ID to the cameras that you want to bring into the interface. Okay. Really quick, in terms of Spectrum capabilities, once you've found the video, the beauty of Spectrum is its capability of once I found the video with that smart search or the time and date search, the calendar search, is that I can very quickly and very easily export the video. I can export that video off either in a multi-video format as shown here, or I can do a single camera display. I can export it off as an MP4, an MKV, an AVI. You'll notice that this particular client is on a Mac. So we have a Mac client as well as a Linux and a Windows client. The recording engines are Windows and Linux capable. And so there's no executable on the Mac client, but on the Windows or Linux client, you would get an executable as an option when you download through here. And then I can also export all the cameras that are on display. I can have up to 64 cameras displayed within the interface. Finally, we'll just switch over. So we'll go to a different system here. So I'm going to jump over into this new system, and just to kind of bring up, because these have become so popular, and actually Matthias showed it in his interface, but we have what we call dewarping capability for fisheye cameras. It's one of the ways that we handle panoramic cameras, and you can turn this into a 90, a 180, or a 360. You can display these next to each other. You can also use what we call our regions of interest feature. So I can go in and draw boxes around areas within the scene, and that'll create almost virtualized cameras within the interface. And we can drag those around and put those in, and we can save those as layouts, as simply as saying save layout and go ahead and give it a name. One other, go back. That's our fisheye dewarping capability built into the client. You can also do that through the mobile app as well. Once you have layouts saved, you can open your layouts right from that tab bar that I talked about at the top there. And you'll see this is our Tampa office. And then what I'll do is just switch over to the system that Matthias was actually logged into, which is our Cerritos office. So this was the parking lot that he was looking at. And we can do things like our panoramic cameras. We can also do things with our PTZ cameras so that I can control them from here as well, right through the interface. Okay. And then we do have other webinars online, and we've got lots of training sessions for things like our video analytic capability, but we can bring in video analytics within the system and show that as well. So again, all searchable within the interface, right within DW Spectrum. We just wanted to give you a little taste of DW Spectrum, for those that hadn't seen it. And then we'll go back here. So that's what we talk about in terms of the ease of use capabilities within DW Spectrum. It is an open architecture platform, as I mentioned, works in Windows, Linux, as well as Mac. Very lightweight. The client itself, the system can be downloaded and installed within minutes. We work with all major manufacturers' cameras. It's not a proprietary solution, so we handle any ONVIF compliant camera. We do have a cloud component to our software, which allows for remote access without the need to do any kind of firewall penetration. And you also get user management. So cloud has become a big part of the DW Spectrum ecosystem that you can come in through our cloud portal. So the same systems that you saw within the thick client here, are available here as well. And I can go into this, this particular system right through the cloud portal, and with my administrative access, I can get in and do all the settings and setup that you saw in the client. I can do that right through here, right through the web portal itself. And I can also get into a health monitoring of the system through the information tab, as well as the ability to view the cameras through the browser. Okay, a little bit about what DW Cloud is. Enterprise features are standard, so the system itself, there's a number of things, whether it's Active Directory integration, multi-server, centralized management, health monitoring, failover are all built into it, into DW Spectrum natively. Talked about cloud a little bit, but simplifies the connection, synchronizes all your devices, so all of your mobile apps, your iPads, your desktop PCs, your laptop PCs are all synchronized. And what I mean by that is basically that all the systems that you have that are associated with your email address are on all of your devices constantly and available without having to manage each individual device. And then, best of all, it's a simple licensing model. There's no tiers to it. There's there's no license per server. There's no annual maintenance cost or no annual additional licenses needed for failover. It's a one-time license purchase that turns on the recording capability. It's easily transferable, and you can upgrade the system with a click of a button as we come out with new upgrades. So we just released version 4.2. So somebody who bought version 1.5 7 years ago is able to upgrade their system and run version 4.2 today with no additional cost. And as I mentioned, the system is scalable from a single camera type system with our CAS product all the way up to our Blackjack servers. And they can all be merged together. Some of the systems that we were logged into there, like this particular demo system, you'll see this is one server in Tampa, as well as 2 servers in California, all merged together in a multi-system. It doesn't matter the size, the operating system on each one of these servers. This independent system can have up to 100 servers with over 10,000 cameras being managed within that Spectrum interface. Okay, so we do have a complete line of what we call Blackjack NVRs, varying sizes and storage sizes depending on the application.